Hey everyone, this week we're working on resumes and cover letters. Um, you may already have a resume, but you may try to revise it if you haven't done it very recently. Um, Using some of the tips and like the strategies I talk about in this video and in the resume guide, you may want to revise it. Yeah, before you submit it. But it's always good to have a resume early now because you'll need it potentially for transfer schools, so for universities, scholarships sometimes ask for it as well. Or you never know, like you might have a job opportunity or internship or something that comes up soon, and then you're not scrambling to make one. Yeah, that's partly why we're doing one in class. Um, a lot has changed about resumes recently, like fairly recently, like what your parents might have told you to do in resumes is completely not recommended now or different now than like what was happening when they were applying for jobs. So I'll talk about some of those changes. Um, so let's talk about types of resumes. Most of you are going to be following a chronological resume, which is just like it sounds like from your oldest, newest experience first. So it's reverse chronological. So newest first, oldest last. Um, and I'll show you what that looks like from an experience standpoint. Right now, you guys don't have, 10, 15 years of experience likely. But yeah, you would put like not your whole like 30 years, let's say if you're 50 or something, like 30 years of experience, but that's kind of the most common. That's one that you'll use. I would kind of recommend you use now. Functional resumes can be helpful, particularly if you're trying to change jobs. um if you don't have much experience in the field and you want to highlight more like skills, so functional resumes, you kind of put it in different like skill areas, like this is my counseling skills, this is my teaching skills, so you range it, all your experiences, by that. Um so in terms of what that looks like, so the one on the left is a chronological, so you can see like the dates are all listed on the aligned like to the right side. So newest first, so that's the present or the current one, and then the oldest last. And then you see the functional on here, it's more like skills summary over here and listing different experiences. And then you put the actual like jobs kind of on the bottom, the titles. So that's just an example of those two. So I talked about, scholarships, interviewing. Sometimes if you ask a professor for a reference, they also will ask you for an interview. So it's good to have that because it helps them to write a reference. So let's talk about headings. This has kind of changed a lot. Um, in terms of name, so the thing you have to have is like name, phone number, email. I wouldn't really put a LinkedIn URL unless like for right now, unless you have it very up to date and you've worked on it a lot. In terms of the address, it's now best practices to not put your street on there, um, and potentially not even put your address at all. But if you are going to put an address, put city and state only. You might be like, why would I not include my street? Um, Sometimes if you can just kind of give people an opportunity to discriminate against you in a sense, because of where you live. So we've heard of like, those side of the tracks, those people are like this. So they're all, stereotypes and what people think depending on where you live. And so you want to make as much as possible for the hiring manager, the candidate, a hiring manager to not be able to discriminate against you or like use information kind of against you, because of their own biases or stereotypes. So, you know, keep street off your resume if possible. Your name should be bigger, bolder. I'll show you what that looks like, but your name should be like larger font by at least eight font sizes larger. But and bolded as well. Um, don't use like drive or street, I guess you're not putting out street, so don't worry about that. But IL, like Illinois, should be spelled out. And then appropriate email address, like, I've had students that are like have like Big Booty Johnson or like XXX something something. And I'm like, nah, you cannot use that on a resume. I wouldn't recommend using your school email just because you have the email now, but as soon as you're done at COD, you lose access to that email system. So use a personal one. If you don't have like a great personal one, that's super appropriate. Like you have a gamer one or something like that's gamer in the title. Just create a new one with like your name that sounds more professional. And then yeah, having a voicemail. I know a lot of times like we don't really check. I barely check my voicemail anymore, but like making sure your voicemail is like appropriate. Like, hi, you've reached Devin Chambers. Sorry, I missed your call. You can leave your name, number, brief message, and I'll return your call as soon as I can. So short, brief. Because likely they'll call you from a number you don't know, and you probably will miss the call. So let's talk about summary. So a lot of times, like your parents probably included an objective, it's called, in their resume, which objective is like to obtain a job in this field that will use my skills, blah, 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 blah. Nobody uses those anymore because like you're applying for the job, so they know what your objective is kind of. So what most people do is just a summary of their skills at the top. For you all in school, you could also put education first instead of that. If you're having a hard time coming up with skills that meet. So this is a kind of example of somebody more not in a college resume, but like somebody who has experience kind of. So this person put like business skills, marketing, sales. You all can put like technology skills, language skills, if you speak or write another language. You could put any other like hard technical skills that you have, like cashier, like cash handling. You could put soft skills too if you want to, like customer service, management experience if you've managed people before, sales experience. So yeah, stuff like that. You don't want to keep this too big. I think this one's for somebody who has a lot of experience, and I doubt their resume is a page. So you want to keep it pretty short. It's a half of this size. Summary of qualifications, and you don't really need this. This is like another example of somebody that has like a lot of experience, a lot of years of experience. So I wouldn't keep. I do this presentation for like other groups, so I wouldn't keep this core competencies or qualifications in there. So focus more on just the skills part. As put that on the top of your resume. And then after skills, it should be skills first, education next. I wouldn't include high school right now since you guys are in college. So just put associates of arts or associates of science. So whatever you're studying here at COD, when you anticipate graduating, and then the name, COD, and then the city, state. And you always want to put, the date you expect to finish. And if your GPA is really good, like it's 3.5 or above, then put that on there. If it's below 3.5, like leave it out. If you have any like coursework that's relevant, you think, to like future job or internship you might be getting or applying for, then let's say you're applying for like a business, like a sales marketing or something, and you have like sales experience in retail. Sorry, you have like sales, not retail. You have sales class experience. So like we have a marketing class that covers sales, or like we have marketing classes or business classes. So those all would be appropriate to include on there. So any relevant coursework or any certificates you've gotten here as well. And then I wanted to show you, before we get into cover letter, I wanted to show you guys a couple things. So this is the resume guide I posted online. So you might be like, what other things am I supposed to put in my resume? Because I don't have, especially if you don't have a lot of work experience. So education, we talked about relevant coursework, any like research you've done in college or projects. This is all your like work experience here, or internship experience that you have. Any like club experience, especially if you were like an officer or president. If you're like just out of high school and you did have like leadership experience in high school, if it was pretty recent in the last 2 years, I think that's good to include, especially if you're like a president of a club or something, or you got any like big awards, scholarships in high school. Um, you wouldn't include that like once you graduate because it's kind of old and employers don't really care about high school as much. But like right now, you're pretty, if you are fresh out of high school, then that stuff is good. Any sort of like volunteer experience is great too, even if it was like babysitting or something. So think outside the box, like maybe you babysit for your cousins or something. Um, that's still like volunteer experience or work experience technically. Um, yeah, and any like awards you've gotten recently. Um, Now, in terms of action verbs, so this is going to be important in the cover letter and the resume, but especially the resume. So all of your bullet points should start with an action verb. So when I say an action verb, the difference between an action verb and just like a regular verb or a passive verb is a passive verb is things like responsible for, you see that a lot in resumes, like responsible for. Um, so like you want to make it action oriented. What did you actually do? So let's say you said like you passively you said responsible for checking out customers in a retail store. So instead of saying that, you would say provided customer service and cash. Let me think about that. Customer service and cash, um, and cash or client, not transactions. Circle back. Sorry. So provided customer service and uh, transaction support to customers in a retail environment. Um, or you could say even checked out customers with their orders. So as long as it's not like passive, and these are all, you can use any of these verbs on here. A lot of your jobs, are probably like customer related, kind of support type work. So, like let's say you babysat or you took care of kids or something, you could say like provided care to children ages, blah, 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 blah. Um, so you always want to make it like very active, action oriented, not passive. So think of, and sometimes you are going to repeat. It's best not to repeat in the same job, like the same word over and over again. So you see this person did like developed. So you wouldn't really want to do that in the same like job. You could do it a couple times over different jobs, but you want to mix it up. You typically don't want too many bullet points per job. So pick like the 3 to 4-ish, 3 to 5-ish most important aspects of that experience, whether it's volunteer job, um, and anything you can quantify too, especially if you're like a manager and leadership experience, like let's say you manage people, you want to put how many people did you manage? What was, maybe you had a club that you were president for. What was the budget of that club that you had to manage? Or how many people like attended events that you hosted as a club? So think of like numbers. Numbers are always great, unless it's like really low. Like you don't want to be like, I don't know, I sold 5 items or something to a customer in a year. Like that's a standout a little bit. So use numbers as much as possible as long as it's like decent size. These are more like action verbs by type. So feel free to use any of these. Your resume should always be 1 page. Some industries they use more than 1 page, but like as much as possible, 1 page. And that might be hard a little bit, but you'll have to like cut some stuff out. So focus on the most important things. Because employers won't read it beyond 1 page. Your formatting and your bullet points, everything should be consistent, like font size, consistent So if you have your dates on one side, they should be all lined up. Typically, you line them up on the right. Um, and ideally, you want to tailor your resume to like whatever position you're applying for. Sometimes it's not realistic if you're applying to like a lot of stuff, so you don't always have to do that. You should use at least a 12. I think like 12 consistently is the best advice, and then your besides your name should be a little bit more. But um, if you need to use like smaller margins, you can to fit more stuff, but don't feel like you have to. And you always got to send your resume in a PDF, not a doc format, unless they ask you to, because then somebody can edit it essentially. Um, or you can see how the formatting is when you have a PDF when you send it, right? Make sure you include the month and the year, unless like you don't know the year. Um, yeah, and then have somebody review your resume. So you guys get extra credit if you have like our career center review your resume. I posted the information on Blackboard. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the basic. Don't use like your picture, like your face on there. In some countries, they put that's like common practice to put your face. So don't put your face. Don't put weird colors. Like just keep it black and white. Don't put like blues and greens and all that stuff. Yeah, and be careful like revealing any personal stuff about you, unless it's like relevant to the job. Like, I don't know, you're applying to something at an agency that focuses on like gender equality or something, like a nonprofit. Then like, you can talk about your experience or something. More so probably in your cover letter, but not super relevant. Like, just be careful with those things. So here's another sample. I kind of like this one actually better than the one I showed on PowerPoint. Um, so remember we talked about objective. This is not really included anymore, so ignore that. So like you can do a summary. You could do the skill summary we talked about. Like I think that's kind of best. And then education next, coursework, if you have one relevant, any sort of like research, experience. So you notice the month and year, like the dates are on the right. They have the skills on the bottom here. I've seen it both ways, like bottom or top. If you have not a lot of skills you can list, put it on the bottom. Um, and then yeah, any like other clubs, volunteer experience clubs typically go last. So that's how you want to do it. Yeah, here's another sample like college one. So you see like relevant coursework experience, pretty similar than the other one. They put skills on the bottom. They don't have like a lot of skills, so you'll probably put the skills on the bottom. So you could either put skills above volunteer experience or below. I find it helpful to put, depending, I guess, how much it is and how much your volunteer experience is. If your volunteer experience is a lot and like related to your experience, you might want to put it above, like next to experience, work experience. Yeah, and then you always want to craft your resume based on the job description too. Like I said, as much as possible. Especially if you're applying for very different things, or something that you don't have a lot of experience in, you want to highlight those things more in your resumes. Yeah, so that's kind of the basics of resume writing. Um, yeah, reach out if you have any questions, and definitely like review your resume with the career center because they are the experts too. So they're always good to get feedback from as well. All right, but that is it for today. Thanks for listening. I look forward to seeing your resumes.